Welcome to YogiVIews, where my guest is yoga itself, through interviewing those who practice it, teach it, sell it, or simply love it. I am Antonio Sausys. As popular as yoga is these days, not everybody practices it. An increasing number of teachers and instructors offer their guidance at studios and gyms. Yet, some teachers are invested in bringing yoga to those in need and that are not necessarily part of the typical yoga student profile. This is the second part of a two-part show where I'm interviewing Jill Satterfield. Jill is the founder of Vajra Yoga and Meditation, a synthesis of yoga and Buddhism that combines meditation, yoga, visualization, and contemplation practices. She is also the founder and director of the School for Compassionate Action, Meditation, Yoga, and Education for communities in need and those who serve them. A nonprofit that trains teachers and works directly with specific populations by providing yoga therapy, meditation, and education to those suffering with chronic pain and illness, post-traumatic stress disorder, and addictions. You work with special populations, and you've opened a nonprofit for this. Tell us a bit about this nonprofit.
Well, it was to meet the needs of what I saw not really being offered in New York City at the time. So I started this about 10 or 11 years ago after being asked to bring yoga and meditation, because at that time and before that I was one of the few people that were melding Buddhism, meditation, and yoga. But to bring these traditions and tools to different organizations in New York City that were working with at-risk youth, people with chronic pain, etc. And so when I would go and, I was invited to be on different boards and give suggestions and actually even designed some trainings, what I noticed was that the people that were teaching the yoga and the meditation weren't really practicing it, and could use a little bit of help. So, for instance, I went to watch a class that was being taught in the Bronx for at-risk kids, and this was at a lockdown facility. They all had orange jumpsuits on, and the fellow taught some Ashtanga yoga, and he was in the front and the kids were in the back, and he was just leading it, and he wasn't even really watching the kids. He was just saying, "Good job, keep going." And the kids were looking at me like, "What?" And then afterwards the woman took over and she was leading the meditation, and she said, close your eyes and clear your mind of all thoughts. Well, first of all, a lot of these kids were there, they're heavily traumatized from not great families. Some of them didn't have families. Some of them were waiting to go to prison. So this was sort of like a holding time for them. And I thought, wow, she's asking them, first of all, to close their eyes. They don't know each other that well because they were in and out all the time. It wasn't like a long-time group.
And most of them have trust issues.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. And then to clear your mind of all thoughts. Well, I didn't think that was a great instruction. So that's when I knew, maybe I
something else was needed.
Yeah, maybe I can offer something here. And so that's how it developed. It was a way to bring also to bring psychology into the mix. So there was yoga therapy, meditation, the Buddhist philosophy, and Western psychology, contemplative psychology. So I started that, and it became a service organization. We taught at a hospital in the behavioral department. We had 6 groups going. We would see every other week. I taught at Roosevelt Hospital's Addiction Center. We taught at a couple of alternative to incarcerated facilities, one in Manhattan, one in Brooklyn. And the training was put together in a way that it was like a regular training where there were intensive weekends, but then we would intern the students in these different places and facilities so they could actually get hands-on experience and see if that actually was the population that they wanted to work with, because sometimes you don't know. So we kept that going as long as we could, and without much funding. I funded it basically.
Always a problem.
Yeah, but the the training still goes. The service part right now is on hold. There are people still teaching in New York that have been trained by me and others. But I just moved to California, so we'll see what kind of life it has here.
Yeah, yeah. Certainly there's a big problem these days with addiction, and not only because of the extreme cases of the now so popular addictions to methamphetamines or crack cocaine or this heavier heroin, but alcoholism is everywhere.
Yeah.
So we don't need to get that severe in the cases to understand that it's a big problem in our society today. How do you go about using yoga with these populations? What's the core of your work?
To bring people into the body, mindfulness of the body, because when you're addicted, or even working towards an addiction, you haven't quite gotten addicted yet, but you're almost there. Usually, we do that as we're looking for an escape. There's something missing. There's a great deal of sadness. There's confusion. There's a lot of suffering, and so someone would choose to drink a little bit more or try a different drug and then keep doing it because it makes you feel better, or you're able to let your problems go for a certain amount of time.
So let me ask you, if you don't mind me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because some yoga masters affirm that addicts are just looking for the same as monks are, only that in the wrong place.
I would tend to agree with that. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And it just takes over. The limbic system then just kind of takes over. So what I find really interesting is trying to teach people, or at least offering some tools that they can use to overcome what becomes this sort of like just base reaction. Is that they want to help them develop the awareness of the emotional brain that just seizes and takes over, and then begin to almost rise above that. And I mean, that may not be the best metaphor, but to be able to say, okay, I am choosing not to follow what this is telling me to do or asking me to do. I am going to choose just for right now to sit here or choose to take a breath. And when you bring the body awareness into it, and someone's in the crux of a craving, which is really uncomfortable, but you bring awareness somewhere into the body, maybe not the breath, maybe the breath is too evasive at that moment, it's too slippery, you can't find it, or it's too quick, it's not comfortable. But come into the bodies, even feel your sit bones. That can buy some time. And it takes you out of the mind and into the tissue, which automatically gives a little bit of relief. And what we want to do is we want to buy people the time to take a pause. And I think those are tools that will help, that do help.
And how do you induce that, or how do you propose that?
Different ways, like a body scan, like imagining, for instance, that you're breathing into your hand. You're not really breathing into your hand. What are you doing? You're bringing your awareness there. You're bringing your mind, your energy, your consciousness, your chi. Everybody loves learning about. Well, most people love learning about that, and it's empowering. Oh, I can bring my mind right here. I can bring my mind anywhere I want. Actually, I have control over my mind. Yeah. Okay. So by teaching different techniques that bring awareness into the body, different sensations into the body.
And so what you're saying, Jill, is that you are proposing to break the cycle of reactivity by bringing awareness into the reaction itself. So a person can take a pause and then decide, make a choice, whether they want to go for that physical or emotional craving or for that illusion that there's something in that drink that is going to make them happier, or that they can pause for a moment and then do what? So my question is,
well, there's lots of different things you can do. You could do maybe a little bit of yoga practice. You could maybe focus on sound, which is a very open, expansive practice, just noticing the sounds in the room. But you could also do something like put a little lavender in your hand and focus on scent. Or run your hands underwater and feel sensation, soothing sensation.
So probably take a different action. Take an action that is not...
Even if it's replacing, that's fine. You replace it with something positive, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, one of the working models of our society is the 12 steps, or the type of organizations such as Alcoholic Anonymous, or Sex Addict Anonymous, or whatever, that use this 12 steps program, where it all starts with acknowledging that you don't have the power to change things. That's why you continue being an addict, because you couldn't stop yourself. And that therefore there is the need for you to give that power to either a higher source, call it God, call it Jesus Christ, call it whoever you want to call it. But you're saying something different here. So,
well, I like to give people the power to empower others, let's say, to give them their own power. Ultimately, I feel that's the best gift any of us can have. I know a lot of people that are in AA, and I've worked in facilities that use 12 steps. And I was an additional support. And I don't, AA works for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that you have a disease and you always will. Personally, and the way I work with other people is to allow there to be some room that you can change, and that you can actually take control and create a life that you would like to see, rather than always feeling the weight and the burden of a label, or being able to blame your lots of different things on your disease. I mean, maybe it is a disease, but I don't feel that by calling yourself something for the rest of your life that you're allowing yourself to change as much as really you could. So I'm going a little bit out on a limb, because I know, again, and I support anyone that goes to AA. And whatever works. Or uses the 12 steps.
Whatever
absolutely.
Works, do it. If it works, do it. If it gets you to.
If it's non-harming.
If it's non-harming and it gets you to solve what you consider dysfunctional, then go for it. But my question was mainly about the power, because this is something that strikes me as well. I think that we are very powerful, and in my personal practice, I have noticed, professional practice, I have noticed that when people are empowered, they tend to do better.
That's
than when the power is put elsewhere.
Exactly.
Be it the doctor, be it the surgery, be it God, be it whoever.
Yeah, and part of the way I healed was I was able to say, look, I don't believe you guys. Let me see what I can do on my own. And so I did something that I was told I could never do, that was absolutely impossible. And so I think that we want to give people that fire and that option. Why don't you freak everybody else who's, everybody out there that's telling you you can't, and do. Yes, you can. Let's work on this together.
Do you also use yoga let's say at the back end, so let's say the individuals working with you have been able to intercept the reactivity, take a deep breath, and choose what they want to do next. And let's say, because we had affirmed that the addicts are after something, are after an experience. You were mentioning that they are trying to run away from suffering or from an unpleasant experience, and at the same time they're after a certain sense of well-being. Do you also use yoga to provide this well-being?
Sure. Sure. I mean, after a yoga practice, you feel
better.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a replacement. That's okay. That's a good replacement.
Yeah. Well, a replacement or a going back from the original replacement.
Right,
because
exactly.
Thinking that a
You
drink
go around,
can give
yeah.
you that spiritual fulfillment,
Yeah.
that's replacement.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
So it can work
so
both
maybe
ways.
refining the original nature.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any sense of whether this using yoga and meditation and Buddhism with this population, whether it affects relapse?
I don't really know.
Don't know. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. That would
I
be
mean,
an interesting study. Wouldn't
It would be really interesting. I mean, I work with a couple of people in New York that are not a 12-step program. They offer alternatives. And like I mentioned, I worked at Roosevelt Hospital's Addiction Center, which is a 12-step program. You know, I think really you need to be consistent with somebody. They need to know you're there. They can call you or find you when they need them. You know, in the types of situations I've found myself in working in addiction centers, there was no contact outside of the 2 times a week. I was teaching these people. Once they were gone, they were gone. There was an exchange of information. Or anything
well,
like
but in
that.
general, also the use of yoga therapy is in the beginning stages of being researched.
Very much. Yeah.
And which is a good thing. And
Yeah.
we have to.
Well, there are alternatives now popping up.
Yes.
And thank goodness. And I think it's a matter of time until we start to really do some research, only, you know, a short amount of time, hopefully, until we research this. And, you know, I mean, I'm all in favor of developing more and more programs that work with people that have addictions.
Yeah. And what is your other population? What else do you work with? Who else do you work with?
Well, the people I really like to work with the most are people in chronic pain. And that might sound a little funny, but who are struggling with illness. Because that was such a tough time for me. You know, I was young, I was in my 20s and 30s. It was very, very isolating, lonely. I felt very patronized. I felt very put down, marginalized. And so I can relate to what you know, other people are feeling. And once I was able to heal myself to the point where I wasn't in pain anymore and I was functioning, I just made a personal vow to help as many people as I possibly could not have to do this, you know, go through these kinds of things by themselves.
Yeah.
And so I really connect and I really understand.
And how do you use yoga and meditation or Buddhism with chronic pain now?
Again, many different ways. You know, when you're in chronic pain, there's times to face what you're working with, what your body is feeling, your heart, your mind is working with. And there's also times to take breaks because it's relentless. It's absolutely relentless. So it's not always about facing forward and just seeing things as they are. You know, it's also about giving yourself a break. And so I try to provide both. And give people as many different tools as possible. There's different meditation techniques, different breathing kinds of techniques, or breath techniques. There's different yoga, therapeutical postures. You know, there's got to be a combination of all of it.
Meditation is hard when you're going through chronic pain. Yeah?
Well, it is.
Especially
and it
the
isn't.
seated, still meditation.
But moving your mind is not so hard.
No.
So in other words, if your knee is in pain and you want to move your mind maybe to some place that feels pleasant to take a break, you can do that. But you can also move your mind into your knee and work with the tissue. You can soften the tissue. You can soften what goes on around pain is armoring. It's called self-armoring. So like if my neck was in pain, my shoulders would go up. Well, I can work with that. And all of a sudden that starts to ease the condition and the tension in my neck. So you can approach pain from so many different doorways. It's finding what one person might relate to or be interested in enough to actually use. And really there's just lots and lots of things we can do that certainly aren't taught to us, at least now, by Western medicine.
For Western medicine, a broken bone is a broken bone. It has no relationship to the rest of the individual and the mind and what the bone is.
And there's no information. Some doctors do give you information, but I mean, education is really important. Information and education. Like, well, what does the liver do? How do the kidneys function? What do they do? What is around the shoulder? Where do the muscles connect? Where do they go? What else can you do to soften an area? Or, do you even notice that your shoulder is up here? Do you notice that you always breathe up here? So when someone says take a deep breath, sometimes you can't. Well, there's yoga restorative postures that bring the breath down. Let's try that. So if you can't do it just by thinking about it, well, let's put ourselves in a posture or do something, fold over, that really brings breath down for us. So we're, repeating and repeating and repeating through different doorways, ways to calm the system and to become intimate with ourselves, so that we know what's going on. We're not relying on the doctor to tell us what's going on, but we know more about what we might need at any given time. That's how we can take care of ourselves.
And it takes a bit of courage. Because there's a reason why we all ran away from displeasure, so it's I see it as an interesting aspect of the union of yoga that
I hadn't thought of it that way.
That you have to be present for the discomfort,
That's
be
right.
comfortable with the discomfort, or be at ease with the pain, which is very difficult to do, but,
and that takes a little while. But in the meantime,
practice, right?
Exactly, it takes some practice. But in the meantime, we can certainly start to ease the heightened discomfort, little bit at a time.
What brought you to the West Coast, if you want to share?
Well, some really dear friends and colleagues from Spirit Rock. The weather. Kind of had it with the New York winters. And also just a bigger community. One person said to me, well, you're moving to where there's a lot of people doing what you do. And I said, great.
It's the right pond.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of people doing things similar to what I was doing in New York, but the community is not as accessible, let's say that, in New York. And I'm just in a place in my life where I want to collaborate more. I've always loved collaboration, but I really want to collaborate, and I really, want to be part of communities.
Good.
So
good.
That's what brought me.
Well, of course, I wish you the best here in your life here. If you were to name one concept of yoga, one aspect of yoga that is particularly appropriate or that speaks to our modern world, because we say that when something emerges in the society is because there is a need. There's something that this thing or technique or fashion is addressing. And yoga is certainly becoming more and more popular. What do you think that concept is, or that aspect of yoga? What is it?
Well, I think it brings us home. I think it brings us home to ourselves. And, you know, the world's gotten more fast and furious, obviously. And it's very easy to just always be going out and not to be looking in. And I think we're also a very physical society. And so we like to, you know, be physical in some way, play sports or get some sort of exercise. And yoga offers us that and more. It offers the dimension of getting to know your own mind, your own body, your own heart, and really come into the physical sense of being. And the physical sense of being is what keeps us on earth, rather than just in the sky and in our heads. So it's real important. And I think, you know, that we just feel more grounded and more awake and more alive and more receptive and able to work with what's going on in our lives after we've practiced or because we practice.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, and I think it offers something that we all really, really greatly need, especially now. We've become very displaced from the earth, especially with computers. Yoga brings us back to our planet and our bodies and our hearts.
Yeah. Jill, there's a number of stories in yoga that they speak to us about these philosophical concepts or aspects of yoga. And Buddhism have them too. Do you have one you would like to share with us?
One tale? Well, yeah, there's the story of the monks that need to cross the river. And one monk sees a raft, grabs the raft, and they float with the raft across the river. And the monk that found the raft continues to carry the raft over his head as they're walking on the bank. And the other monk says, well, why are you carrying the raft? And the other monk says, well, because I can't let it go. And so I think that yoga, the different types of styles or practices of yoga that we do, the different kinds of breathing practices that we do, the different techniques or styles or practices of meditation that we do are all to eventually allow us the option of letting it all go and being completely free with no technique. So we can eventually let go and just be. Be open and just be.
Very interesting. Perhaps that's one of the things that Buddhism and yoga have in common. The letting go, or the in Buddhism, and the emphasis in non-attachment.
That's right.
In yoga. Well, Jill, I thank you for having joined us
Thank you for inviting
today.
me.
And I wish you the best here in California. And perhaps you'll come back to the show some other time with something else you want to share with us.
Excellent. Thanks, Antonio.
Thank you for coming. This was Jill Satterfield. She is the founder of Vajra Yoga and Meditation, a synthesis of yoga and Buddhism that combines meditation, yoga, visualization, and contemplation practices. She is also the founder and director of the School for Compassionate Action, Meditation, Yoga, and Education for Communities in Need and Those Who Serve Them, which is a nonprofit organization that trains teachers and works directly with specific populations by providing yoga therapy, meditation, and education to those suffering with chronic pain and illness, post-traumatic stress disorder, and addictions. I hope you liked our show today, and if you care to let me know, shoot me an email at antonio@yogiviews.com. I look forward to seeing you the next time.